All right. Okay, so I want to teach you guys today. I want to focus on when you guys get the I need to think about it objection. I really want to talk about objections in general, okay? Because objections are actually a good thing. It's not rejection, right? Rejection is no, I don't want your stuff. Like this is nasty, like or whatever version of that, right? Like that's rejection. In Cutco, we don't experience a lot of rejection. We get more objections, right? It's like, I like it, but I can't because this. I like it, but I need to ask my spouse. I like it, but I need to wait. You guys all with me, right? Some version of that. So first of all, the presentation is designed to handle objections before they come up if you if you actually like do the stuff we talk about. So let me explain, right? The major objections that we get in Cutco are not now, or I need to think about it, right? Which we're going to hit that hard here. It's too many pieces. I wouldn't use all those tools in the set. Okay. There's my knives are fine. All right. We're going to go through that. Then there's the it's too expensive and I can't afford it. And those are two separate ones. Those are the 5 main objections that we get in our business. And so I want you guys to know, like, what could we do? Like, what can you do prior so you don't get that? So we know for years, for over 2 decades, those are the 5 biggest objections we get. Would you guys agree that those are major objections that you've heard when someone doesn't buy? It's either like, it's too expensive, I can't afford it, I need to think about it, or not now, it's too many pieces, all right, or my knives are fine, all right? So I want to walk through that process with you all, and how do we handle this? How do we take care of this ahead of time? So let's start with the first one, all right? The first one of my knives are fine, all right? So when they say my knives are fine, they're in one of 2 places, okay? They have good stuff, and they got it recently. All right. So their knives are fine for right now. Right. And we're going to talk about what you do with that one. And then the other is like, they don't have good stuff, but we have to dig in a little bit more. So when you're live at their house, you see their knives. So it's easier to diagnose. And so as you guys get more experience, I encourage you, like, now that the city's open, get out, go do them live, bring your laptop, go have some fun at their house, eat some food with them, get a bunch of referrals, like that's a great thing to do. All right. But anyway, let me walk through this. So as far as my knives are fine. So I'll say like, oh, Miss Susie. So you want to do during the video. All right. You want to point out and say like, oh, do you guys have something like that? Or do you guys have a drawer like that? And they're like, oh yeah. Like, they have junk stuff, or they're like, oh no, we have woo stuff, or they'll say something. And if they don't mention it during the video, when I pointed out the junk knives drawer, as soon as the video's over, those of you who were there at the last week at the kickoff, in the handout I gave with 7 steps to a sale, it says after the video, like if they have Wusthof or Schoon, what to say, right? Like it had it on there. It's the top of the 2nd page, by the way, if you want to reference it. But it has like what to say to your customer in terms of like, oh yeah, most people who have Henkels. And so if you don't know what they have when the video's over, like, oh my gosh, did you see the guarantee? Did you like see that edge that's unique to Cutco? Like whatever you're pointing out right after the video, but ask them, all right? Say, by the way, do you guys, what kind of knives do you know if you guys have like Wusthof or Henkels, or do you have like most houses do like just a collection of stuff through the years, right? So that's a question you can ask right after the video, which by the way, is going to help you, like know if their knives are fine or not, right? And so if they say, oh yeah, we have Wusthof and Henkels, and I'm like, awesome. I'm like, those are great knives. I'm like, the biggest thing that I found with people that own Wusthof or Schoon or Henkels is that they get really annoyed having to sharpen them because they are supposed to be sharpened every time they're used. And even if you do take care of them properly, eventually you will replace them. And they're also, it tells you when you buy them, the pamphlet says, do not put in the dishwasher. So it's not convenient for the everyday mom. So that's one of the things Cutco really prides ourselves on, is really focusing on the everyday mom. Cool. But let me show you, and then I'm going to dive into like my transition to going into like talking about the sets. All right. But that's just a little chat, like right after, like you want to know, like, what do they have, right? Like, I want to know if they have good stuff, because if they have good stuff, they're in one of 2 places: ready to replace, or they're not. Okay. If they're ready to replace, trade-in special, or if they're even considering it, they're like, oh, I like it, Briley, but like, oh, we bought good knives like 4 years ago and they still work really well, you know? And I'm like, hey, I totally get it. I'm like, what most people I see who have like newer Woo stuff, they'll get stuff like our steak knives, they'll get our spatula, they'll get a trimmer, they'll get our super shears, they'll get our flatware, they'll get our pots and pans, they'll get outdoor accessories, hunting, fishing, gardening, barbecue tools, and all the other kitchen gadgets we have. Those are the most popular things for people that own Woo stuff. All right. So that's what I'll say. But like, they literally, guys, could buy $3,000 from you and not buy one knife. I don't know if you know that and you realize that. So when they already have knives that work well, great. Like, who else, what else can we add to their collection? Because here's what we know. If they have Woo stuff, they have Shun, we know two things. We know they like quality. We know they know quality costs money. Everyone got it? We know that. So it's very easy to add on. And what I always did with those customers is whatever I sold them, I always added a trimmer for free if they didn't buy one. They're like, oh, I don't need that. I'm like, oh, you do. I'm like, you don't even know you do. And I always gave it to them for free in white. That way it stands out in their kitchen. It was on purpose. And guys, I don't want to say every, because maybe there was one that didn't, but if not every, almost every single customer that I did that with, within a month, I had a message saying like, okay, you were right. This is the best knife ever. I'm like, I told you. I was like, let me know when you're ready to upgrade. And some bought soon and some bought later. Okay. But just like letting them have it, because to grab a knife that's always sharp, and guys, our trimmer, anything with a double D edge will cut like that for 10 plus years. Theirs won't. You can take it out of the package. We can do a rope test. It's going to cut through in half a stroke when it's new out of the package, like Woo stuff or Shun, right? You use it to cut a meal and you go back to cut the rope. Now you're looking at a couple strokes. All right. You pretend you're cooking another meal and cut some stuff up and then go to cut the rope and you're looking at 10 to 15 strokes. It's wild. Okay. And guys, for us, you use the Cutco, like a petite carver. It's like a stroke or a stroke and a half. And you go to cut stuff and do it again, same thing. You go to do that and do it again, same thing. You could do that for 10 years and it still cuts the same way. Does everyone understand that? So like our knives are unreal. So I feel really good. I always want to give them something free so that they can see it and they can use it. All right. So again, my knives are fine. If they have good knives, I'm like, oh, awesome. I'm like, hey, what most people who own Woo stuff, I say this to the customer. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, you have great knives. I'm like, they're top sold in stores. I'm like, biggest thing is that complaints I get from Woo stuff and Shun is that you do have to sharpen them every time they're used, right? They're not, or I say first, they're not made to put in the dishwasher, right? It like specifically tells you not to put them in the dishwasher. And then second, you have to sharpen them every time they're used, or you're supposed to, right? And even if you take awesome care, you will replace them in like 10 to 15 years, right? They're not made to last forever. Where when someone invests in Cutco, they buy it once, they use it every day, and they have it forever. And they're like, oh, wow. I'm like, yeah. So Cutco makes everything for the kitchen. I'm like, we make pots and pans, flatware, knife sets, outdoor. I'm like, and so even if your stuff, you know, other Woo stuff owners, like their stuff is like, they just got them in the last 5 years and they're still okay with it. They'll add a lot of our other stuff, which I'll show you all that real quick. But if you see this and you're like, man, I'd really like this, I'll tell you a little bit later, there's actually a trade-in program, Miss Susie. And the trade-in actually allows you to trade in some of your old stuff. You can donate it to charity. I can pick it up from your house if they're like local. If not, you can say you can donate it to charity, a local church. It's an honor system, but Cutco does that to help sell more of the larger sets. And you'll get a really nice discount on my homemaker. On any of our family sets, you'll get a really nice discount or get a ton of stuff for free. So food for thought, we'll talk about that later. But like I'm planting that seed, like right after the video, we're talking about what they had, what they saw. And I'm like, all right, so Cutco makes everything for the kitchen. We've got pots and pans, I'm going to start with the knife sets first, because that's usually people's first investment. And then I say like, so we've got 3 family sets. And again, you guys have this. And if you don't, let us know, put it in there so someone can put it in the chat, but it's the 7 steps to a sale that I shared last week. And I shared this past week in a workshop. Okay. So that's that. So my knives are fine. You guys got that? Like if they have, you want to point out during the video, like the junk knives drawer, you want to say, hey, did you see that drawer? Do you guys have one like that? Like say that, and they'll tell you like, oh yeah, yeah, or if you can't hear them right after the video, be like, oh, so do you guys have like a collection of stuff from the years? Or do you guys have like a nice set of like Wusthof or Henkels? And they'll tell you. So that way I know what I'm working with. Cool. If you don't see it. Then the next objection, all right, is like when someone doesn't buy, they say like, oh, that's too many pieces, or I don't need all that. Okay. That means, just so y'all know, you need to do a better job with your names and uses. Cool. When you go to talk about the homemaker, it's super simple. I'm like, Miss Susie, our basic set for people who don't really cook. It's 7 knives, 2 forks, and a spatula. It covers all your basic cutting needs for a lifetime. Cool. I'm like, if you like to cook a little bit and entertain, I recommend having at least the signature, because it does also have the cheese knife for cheese and wine. You can also use it for any starchy foods. You can cut very thin slices. It's really nice. It has our hearty slicer for muscling through tougher jobs. It has a second chopping knife, which is nice, when you have like a bigger, like people over, or, you're chopping. Maybe my husband will use like the petite sentoku while I'm using the chef knife, right? And so people helping in the kitchen. And then it has extra table knives and comes with the option of the steak knives. So that one's really popular and looks so gorgeous. And then our complete set has all our basic tools and all of our specialty knives. Cool. So let me just go ahead and go through the basic ones real quick, because that is the most purchased set, because it's practical for anybody, whether they cook or not. So the first tool in the basic set is the air knife, and then I go through the names and uses. And guys, when I finish, I recap. I say, so Miss Jones, again, the basics, like right before I get to the table knife. So once I finish the last thing I talk about, the carving set, I go, so again, to recap, 7 knives, 2 forks, and a spatula. You've got an air knife for your air stuff. You have a small utility. You have a sandwich maker. You have a everyday carving and prep knife, all right, which is like a larger utility. You have a heavy duty. You have a delicate chopper. You have a bread and a master carving set. Cool. And then you have the mighty little table knives. So check this out. Go to the next slide, and then I'm going to show them, the table knives and go through the steak knives. All right. So you just have to do a better job with names and uses. Now, let's say you did get that objection. Here's what I would say. I say, hey, Miss Susie, I totally get it. It's a lot of different tools. And if you haven't been used to using the right tool for the right job, it can feel weird. It's kind of like golf, right? Like all I know is putt-putt. So it's like one club the whole time. And when I went to the driving range for the first time, I was like grabbing whatever club, and my friend's like, no, that's a putter. Like, you need a driver. And I was like, what are you talking about? Right. But like, I don't golf. I don't know about it. But when you use the right tool for the right job, it's safer, it's more efficient, and it's more enjoyable. All right. So write that down. It's safer, it's more efficient, and it's more enjoyable. I'm like, just like shoes. Shoes are meant to protect your feet, Miss Jones. But like, you're not going to go running in high heels, although I'm pretty good at it. You're not going to do that, right? Like, you're going to put on the right shoes to go out for a run. I don't intentionally put on heels to go for a run around the block, right? So again, same thing, right tool for the right job. So you guys just want to, you've got to, this is getting more advanced, is listening to your customers, knowing, right? But if you ever get that objection at the end, I'm like, hey, Miss Susie, I totally get it. I'm like, it's kind of like, there's the right tool for the right job. And if you guys think, if you're like, man, I get it a lot, say it in the beginning before you start showing the homemaker, right? Like right before, you're like, so I'm going to show you our basic set. It's 7 knives, 2 forks, and a spatula. For people who haven't really like had a set or just use random stuff sometimes, it's basically like having, when you finish showing the homemaker, right? Like finish showing the tools. I'm like, so to recap, I tell them the recap, and I go, and so that way you have the right tool for the right job, like you don't want to go running in high heels, you're not going to like go play golf with one club unless it's putt-putt. All right. But no golfer, they all know there's chippers and putters and drivers and all of that jazz. Right. So same thing, like when you use the right tool for the right job, it saves time. It's more efficient. It's more enjoyable. It's safer, last thing to complement your set is a table knife. And then I go through that. All right. So those are things that can help you if you're getting too many pieces, or I wouldn't use all. So again, you need to do a better job with names and uses. Are you getting a yes every time? Hey, Miss Jones, the next one you said is this. Do you guys ever do this or this or that? I'm like, oh, awesome. That's what you use that for. You can also use it for X, Y, and Z. The next tool in your set is your small. Do you guys ever cut limes or lemons or tomatoes? Or they're like, yeah. I'm like, perfect. I'm like, it's for all your citrus stuff. You can also use it for trimming the fat off of meats, deboning to skinning. We do make a specialty knife made for that comes in the complete, but if you don't cook a lot, you can get away with the trimmer. Cool. The next tool on your side. So just every time, it's like, do you guys ever cut this or this or that? And they're like, oh yeah, we do that. I'm like, awesome. That's what that, like, it becomes that knife, right? They're like, we make sandwiches all the time. I'm like, this is your sandwich making machine, right? If when you're talking about, do you guys ever cut limes or lemons? And they're like, oh my God, we eat oranges like crazy. And I'm like, awesome. This is your orange cutting knife. I'm like, you can also use it for grapefruit, limes, lemons, all your small stuff, and also for right? And you go through that super fast. So that would be when you get like, it's too many pieces, or I wouldn't use all that. We just, if you're hearing that a lot, you know, crap, I didn't do a good job connecting a use for each tool. And if you're not hearing yes on each knife as you're going through the tools in the homemaker, you're not going to sell big sets. Okay. So just know that. So that's that. The third is the, or let me go through the, it's too expensive, I can't afford it. And then I'm going to do the, I need to think about it, because that's what I wanted to show you guys, some psychology around that to really help with that. So it's too expensive. What does that mean? Make a note. If you hear it's too expensive, that means you didn't build value properly. Cool. They didn't see the value. That's it. It's too expensive means it costs more than it's worth. That's what too expensive means. Now, sometimes they couple it. They might say, oh, Garrett, that's too expensive, I can't afford it. Well, that's not true. It wasn't that. Like when they say I can't afford it is a bull crap answer. Just so you guys know, like of the 5 objections, I can't afford it is actually called a smoke screen. All right. Unless they lost their job. Like if they lost their job, they can't afford it. They shouldn't be spending money. Okay. But if they're working, then that's not a real thing. Everyone understand that? All right. So if they're working, that's not a real thing. So just know that. Like I always knew when they said I can't afford it, I'm like, oh crap, they didn't like it, or they weren't excited, or there's something else. That's not the real thing, because I'm not seeing people that can't afford it. I'm not seeing people that are unemployed. All right. Now I bumped into some by accident, right, that had lost their job, and I didn't know that, but I didn't intentionally book the appointment with them. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's really big, really important. So so with it's too expensive, you know that you need to work on value. All right, dropping seeds. Are you dropping seeds from the beginning? And again, that document gives you guys a lot of seed plants that you can use are in there. All right, to just like talk about price, like, oh, we also make K-bar. Like obviously this is super high quality stuff, so definitely it's not cheap. When you mentioned the guarantee, oh, Miss Susie, did you see how it was guaranteed forever? I'm like, yeah, you know, obviously that costs more to have a guarantee like that. So just so you know, these are an investment. We'll get to prices later. So anytime you can say they're not cheap, they're an investment, like those are really good things. When you're in Spanish, all right, you want to be saying like, oh, es una inversión, no son barato. You don't want to say son caro, because caro is the like bad expensive, meaning they're not worth it, right? You want to say they're not cheap, they're an investment. So no son barato, son una inversión. Like those are the types of things you want to say as you're going through, but you want to plan it, you know? So my goal, and I learned this from Cutco sales professionals, but my goal that I learned was, could I talk about how it costs more? It's not cheap. It's an investment. Could I say that 10 times before I get to prices? Like if I can somehow weave it in, like from the beginning, right? Like, oh, I'm assuming you didn't put away 7 to 10 grand to redo your kitchen today, right? I'm like, no, I'm just kidding, Miss Susie. This stuff's way too expensive for you to buy just to be nice. But I do want to let you know why so many people invest in Cutco, right? Like that's a spot. Another time in the beginning with goals, I can say, hey, Miss Briley, my goal is to sell 10 grand more in the next 5 days. If you want to just write me a check for 10 grand, then I'll definitely hit my goal. I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. Obviously, you know, like I'm just joking around. We'll keep a lookout, but you know, stuff's not cheap. We'll get to prices later. It's really freaking great though. I'm going to show you the video right now that's going to keep a lookout for the guarantee, because that's one of the biggest reasons we cost what we do. Check out the craftsmanship and the unique edge to Cutco, and don't miss the penny. You got to check out the penny. So now we roll in the video, and during the video, I'm pointing stuff out. And then at the end, I'm like, so did you see the edges? I'm like, yeah, super unique to Cutco. Obviously costs more to have that. I'm like, did you try like the handle? The handle's actually made of thermal. So like, I like to review the features and benefits. And guys, there's 5 features of Cutco. One is the handle design. All right. The ergonomics of it fits lefties, righties, big, small hands. The second thing is the material in the handle. We use thermal resin, which is similar to what they use for bowling balls, football helmets, inside of dishwashers. So it's super sturdy and it doesn't absorb moistures. Okay. The third feature is the actual steel. We use a high carbon stainless steel. So it stays sharp and it stays clean. All right. You have the best of both worlds. The fourth feature is the edge. All right. On anything that we drag across a board, it's protected with the double D edge. And even our straight edges are made differently where they hold their edge a lot longer. All right. So it's good. And then the fifth part is the guarantee. So those are the reasons Cutco costs what it does. So at the end of the video, you could be like, oh, did you catch? Be like, by the way, the handles are made of this. This is made of, like, you can recap that if you want for them. But I want to make sure they understand why Cutco costs what it does. Okay. And then when we finish the video, I'm like, oh, did you check out the guarantee? Like, I'm recapping that stuff. I'm like, yeah. So obviously, I'm like, this costs more. I'm like, but it's worth it because, like, you have the best of both worlds. Like, that steel, having that high carbon stainless definitely costs more, but it's great because you have, it stays sharp, stays clean. You have the best of both worlds, like having that unique edge, like it costs more to have that, but it's great because your knife is going to be sharp, like cut the same way for the next 10 to 15 years, depending how much you use it. Some people, I've had them 20 years and they still cut perfect, but I recommend sending them in within 10 to 15 years. All right. So just so you know that, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. Then you have the, let me make sure here, I'm not going to die. All right. I need a charger, by the way, if someone can bring me one. So as far as okay, so that's too expensive. So just know that, like, we need to build value a little bit more. And so I always like to talk about the features. I always like to plug in pricing. As we're going through. All right. And then during the names and uses, if you guys didn't hear me at the kickoff, I was talking about like how people can save money. I'm like, people spend so much more money, like buying stuff pre-cut instead of whole. And you can save so much buying whole instead of pre-cut. Why don't people buy whole chicken? Why don't people buy whole fruits? Pay the butt to cut, especially if you have crap knives. When you have good knives, it takes like 2 seconds and you're saving so much more money buying it whole instead of pre-cut. All right. So are you referencing, through your names and uses? And if you do that, you're not going to get, it's too expensive. All right. I stopped getting that when I got good at building value. What I did get was, oh, I just can't afford it right now. I did get that. And again, that's a smoke screen. They either weren't excited or they lost their job and didn't want to tell you, or, there's something else. All right. So just know that, again, I can't afford it isn't the real thing unless you're seeing someone unemployed. All right. They say, oh, it wasn't in the budget. That kind of goes with that. Like, no shit. Who put aside a couple grand waiting for the random knife person to call, right? Like, they had no idea. So it's totally out of the blue. And that's why they need to be excited about it. And you need to be excited as you talk to them, because the fact is that you need to be excited because they feed off of you. They feed off of your enthusiasm, right? And like your belief in the product and in them owning the product. All right. Thanks, girl. So know that as you're going through, like, you want to be excited. If you watch like Hunter do his demo, he's learned from friend. If you watch Francisco, you're like, dude, is this guy on crack? Like during at SC1 next week, we're going to have a cutting station. We're going to have them like chopping stuff up, answering questions. So you guys can come use some of the products, right? Like, many of you have never like gotten a chance to learn how to actually use Cutco, even though your parents might have it at the house or whatever. So we're so excited for you guys to actually get to use all the different things. We're going to have like a chopping station, a whacking station, a double D station. We're going to have scissors, cutting pennies, all the things. All right. So you guys can see, but you guys work with an unreal product. All right. And the last objection is I need to think about it or not now. Cool. So this here, guys, means that we haven't found their comfort zone. Everyone understand that? Like, they're not comfortable for one reason or another. So a couple things we can do with this. So one, I'm like, hey, is that if you're doing a lot of the things on the front part at the end, it's just, they're not comfortable with that. Let's just strap down. I'm like, you know what? That doesn't seem like something you're super comfortable with. I'm like, no worries. I'm like, is it cool with you if I drop down and show you some of the smaller stuff? I'm like, we have some stuff that's like 80 to $100 today. And you can get a really nice bundle to start your collection. And when you're ready, you can always upgrade to the homemaker later. And they're like, oh, really? And like, I'm going to drop down. But let me give you guys a couple things. So when someone says at the end, I need to ask my spouse, right? Or I need to ask my husband. Guys, when they go to talk to and they're like, let me talk to my husband, I'll get back to you. I'm going to tell you guys right now, 99% of those are going to be a no sale. All right. Why? Well, they're going to go to their husband and go, honey, I saw this presentation of Cutco today and I wanted to get some. I wanted to talk to you about it. What's the first thing he's going to ask? Anyone know? How much? Thank you, Barrett. Yep. How much? So that's what he's going to say. And then you're like $500 or $1,000. Like, what do you think he's going to say? He's like, hell no, right? He doesn't know the value. People need to understand why Cutco costs what it does if they're going to make the investment. All right. Again, Cutco's not a random purchase. Like you just buy new shoes every week when you have stuff on sale. It's like a refrigerator. You're not going to have 10 refrigerators and every time there's a cute one, buy another one. You're going to buy it when you need it. And so Cutco's an appliance that people are buying for a home, and they need to understand that it's an appliance that they're going to like invest into and have for the rest of their life. So if their spouse wasn't there, you don't ever want them to talk to their husband. Everyone understand that? Like when they say, I'm going to talk to my husband and call you back. Like, heck no, I never wanted that. All right. I learned it the hard way. I was like, okay, in the beginning, no sale, no sale, no sale. My manager's like, no. All right. If they say, I need to ask my husband or I need to talk to him, guys, like, I'm going to try to drop down. Like, I'm going to show you what I do so that I don't get that. I'm going to show you how you avoid that. Okay. But let's just say you got it. Then I'm going to say, hey, Miss Susie, I'm like, by the way, if you try to explain it to him, he's not going to understand the value. Is it cool if we reschedule time to do it with him? And I can do my 15-minute version. We don't need to do like the whole long version. And then they say, yes, I'm going to rebook them. And all we're going to do is say, hi, you're going to play the video. I'm like, so I don't know if your wife told you why they're so good, but I wanted to play this for you real quick. Play it on 1.25 speed. All right. He's going to get it quick. It's 8.5 minutes. And then you say, hey, we've got 3 family sets, and you tell them like the different sets. You do not do names and uses. And then you just say, and you show them all the gifts and accessories, everything Cutco makes. And you go, so Mr. Jones, have you had a chance to price fine cutlery lately? I'm like, cool. It's like anything else. There's such a wide range of quality, and you're going to close. That's it. That's all you're going to do when you go to see the husband. You can play the video on 1.25. Cool. You're going to ask them first. Did she tell you why they're so good? I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to see this. Play the video. All right. At 1.25 speed. Then tell them we have 3 sets. We have our basic set for people that, just for basic cutting needs, 7 knives, 2 forks, and a spatula. It was designed to cover your basic cutting needs for a lifetime. Cool. That's our most purchased set for people that don't cook. All right. Just the average family. For families that like to cook or do basic entertaining, we recommend our signature set. And then our complete set is for people who love to cook, love to entertain, or love to have the best of everything. Cool. Then we have our gifts and accessories, and then you walk through gifts and accessories, and then you go straight to closing. That's all you're going to do. Cool. So do that if you need to. But the goal is to get around that. So here's what I learned to do. So let's say, first off, on the phone, you guys need to on the phone always ask if their spouse is going to be there. If the wife says, oh no, he's at work, or do you need him here, or some version, I'm like, oh, I definitely would love to see you guys together. And here's what I said. I said, Miss Suzanne, I personally love to see husbands and wives together. I prefer it just because what I found is a lot of people end up liking it, like Julie did. And most couples, when it comes to things from the house, they like to make decisions together. Is that how you guys do things too? Or do you kind of do the decisions for the house? And they'll say, oh yeah, we do that too. I'm like, awesome. I'm like, then let's definitely do it with your husband. Is later in the evening better, or is it better on the weekend? And we're going to lock that in. Cool. Or you have the wives that go, I do whatever I want. I'm like, okay, great. All right. And I'm going to book her on her own. Fine. So anytime, I just be open, be honest, right? It's like, oh, Miss Susie, I love to see husbands and wives together. I'm like, because a lot of times people end up liking stuff, right? And when it comes to things from the house, what I found is that most husbands and wives like to make decisions together for investments for the home. Although I know some wives do all the shopping themselves. So do you like to do things with your husband too? Or do you kind of do your own thing? And then they're like, oh yeah, definitely do it with my husband. Great. You know when to book them and to book them together. And if they say, oh, I do whatever I want, like, great. So now I have the wife who said, I do whatever I want. Or maybe you got to a demo and the husband couldn't be there, and now you have the wife, right? You're with the wife alone. What I know is that the most common objection that I'm going to get if they're not comfortable is going to be what? Oh, I need to ask my husband, right? I know I'm going to get that. If they don't say yes, they're going to say, I need to ask my husband. Got it? And that's just what's going to happen. So it's called prefacing the objection. How do we handle this objection before it comes up? Cool. So Garrett, you're with your customer and you're like, all right, so Miss Susie, so we get to the closing, right? when you get to closing. So you go through, you tell them the price, right? We're at the top of page 9 when you said, hey, the homemaker is actually only $13.26. It includes shipping. So I'm like, so Miss Susie, you could pay for it all today. All right. If you want, I'm assuming you didn't put away a couple grand waiting for the knife girl to come by. I'm like, also, your husband hasn't gotten to see it, and I know most couples like to make decisions together, so what majority of wives that I see alone during the day do, or the majority of times when I see a wife alone, they actually end up using our deposit program. And so what this is, it's 100% refundable deposit. Go ahead and write this down. 100% refundable deposit. Gives you 3 weeks to try it out. And I go through that. You guys have seen me do that. So I go through that slowly. I said 3 weeks, try it out. I go, and so Ms. Jones, so how this works is you would put the $289 deposit, you would get the products. That way you can use them, abuse them, show them to your husband, use them together, and you guys can make a decision together. Cool. Worst case scenario, send it back. All right. Send your husband back. Money back guarantee. No, I'm just kidding. Send the products back. You get 100% of your money back. All right. Highly doubt that's going to happen. But just so you know, even if there's one tool he doesn't want, you can send the one knife back out of the set. The company's going to refund you the full retail value, even though it's discounted in the set, because they know you're spending money on shipping. So they will refund you the full retail if that happened. And if you guys want to upgrade later, we can do that super easy. Cool. So just so you're aware of that. And they're like, oh, okay, great. I'm like, so I tell them, I'm like, so that's what most of my wives do. Then I say, so we have something called buy now bonus. It's a first call special. It's a reason to buy today versus later. If you wanted to go ahead and put that 100%, and again, you have to keep saying that. If you wanted to go ahead and put down that 100% refundable deposit, you guys end up keeping it. You can pick out $150 or whatever you want. They're like, oh, I'm like, yeah. I'm like, so I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask, do you want to go ahead and try the homemaker out? You could pay for it all now, or just do the deposit like most of the moms I see do. That way you have it for 3 weeks, show it to your husband, and you guys can make a decision together. Right? So now she's not going to go, oh, what? I need to ask my husband. Like, no crap. I said that, right? Like, so I bring it up before they do. So again, you told them the price. Hey, Miss Susie, the homemaker is actually not as much as the booth stop. It's actually only $13.26. You could pay for it in full if you wanted to, but I'm assuming you didn't put away couple grand waiting for the knife girl to come by, right? And obviously your husband hasn't gotten to see it too. And so what most of the moms that I see alone typically do is they'll use our deposit program, because what it allows you to do is put down 100% refundable deposit to try out the products for 3 weeks, see how you like it, show it to your husband. That way you guys can make a decision together and then go from there. Cool. So go ahead and write this down 100%, and I explain it again. I'm like, yep. So you'd put the $289, you would get the set. You guys would have 3 weeks to use that. We could show it to him, let him use it. You can use it, right? You haven't gotten to use it either. Try it out and see how you guys like it. Worst case, you had free Cutco for 3 weeks, right? You get your deposit back. But I highly doubt that's going to happen. You're going to love it. So you can either call it off, whatever, the rest of that, pay it off, or use the easy pay, which is da-da-da, and write it down, right? So you guys have the rest of that. But that's what you want to do there. So anytime I see a wife alone, I always do that. Got it? Always. When I mention it, hey, obviously your husband's not here either. Even if they told me, oh, wait a second. If they told me on the phone, oh, Garrett, I do whatever I want, or I buy whatever I want, Briley. I'm like, okay. So at the end, I go, so I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you. I'm like, I know you make all the decisions and do whatever you want. If you want to pay for it all today, or if you prefer to do the deposit, that way you can get it, show it to your husband, and you guys can make a decision together. And they're like, oh, maybe I'll just deposit so you could see it. They're like, no, I'll just buy it. Right. But it's almost playing to their ego. All right. So that's something that I learned, and it's magical. All right. The other thing is, if I have somebody, anytime I have somebody that feels, like they're not so into it, right? Like you can tell when someone's like, oh my God, like super into it. And then some people that are like not into it as you're going through the names and uses. When I don't feel their energy and I don't feel them fully into it, then that's when I'll say at the end, when I go to close, I'm like, hey, Miss Susie, you could pay for it all today. The 1326. I'm like, well, one, I'm assuming you didn't put away a couple grand waiting for the knife protocol, right? I'm like, but two, I'm like, you guys haven't even gotten a chance to use the products, right? Or get a feel for it. And so it's kind of hard to make a decision without getting to see it. So with a lot of customers that like it, like the idea of it, is they'll use our deposit program. And this is our think about it clause. and you just rename it, right? When I explain it to the wives, by the way, I say our deposit program is our husband back guarantee. I don't think I said that to you guys, but I call it the husband back guarantee. And that's why I said, so if he doesn't like it, just send him back. I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. Send the products back. You get your money back, right? But when it's a wife alone, I call it the husband back. Our deposit program is our husband back guarantee, right? When I'm talking to somebody who is not into it, I said, Miss Susie, you could pay for it all now. I'm like, but you haven't even gotten to use this yet, right? So like, I'm saying it like, I'm appealing to their part that's like, I don't know if I really want this, right? I'm like, Miss Susie, you haven't even gotten to use this stuff yet. I'm like, and see how awesome it is. I'm like, so what a lot of my customers use is our think about it clause. And our think about it is it's 100% refundable deposit program. You can write down 100% refundable. And it actually gives you the opportunity to put a 20% deposit down and get the products and use them for 3 weeks. Cool. So you'd put the deposit, get the products. And from when you receive them, 3 weeks, try them out. Make sure you love them. Worst case scenario, send it back. You had free Cutco. All right. But highly doubt that's going to happen. You have those options. But I just say, but that way you just get a chance to like really think about it, like by actually using it, seeing how you like it, and making, an educated decision. So anyway, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask, do you want to go ahead and pay for it all today? Or do you rather do the think about it clause, put that deposit down, get it, try it out, see how you like it, and then decide? They're like, yeah, let's do that. Right. So again, you're appealing psychologically to that part of them that's unsure. Okay. So I went over on my time. So I'm going to stop talking now. But I do want to get feedback